Hi, this is Ted. So a couple days ago I downloaded the book by C. Peter Wagner, Territorial Spirits. You know, I figured I need to get into some of these things, learn what they're saying and stuff. Now I had C. Peter Wagner as a professor, and I brought this up several times in my videos, but I had him as a professor at Fuller Seminary shortly before he started getting into this kind of stuff. The spirits and the warfare and all that kind of stuff going on in the spiritual world. The introduction is by somebody in Youth with a Mission, and so he talks about all kinds of territorial spirits that he and Keith Green and other people have experienced, and because of that he's built a theology around his experience. I will talk about that a little later as I get more and more into this book. Right now I'm just in the first couple chapters. I read or listened to the one YWAM character, and I'm not going to comment on that until I get more from C. Peter Wagner. And if you don't know who C. Peter Wagner is, he's the one who got the New Apostolic Reformation, coined the name, and gave it the term, and also he kind of gave it a jump start. He's the one who's considered a super apostle by many in the New Apostolic Reformation and many in the charismatic movement. When I was listening to his first chapter that he was writing, I was actually surprised to begin with. Why? Because he used a lot of scripture, and he used it properly. Not like I usually hear these people quoting about healing, faith healing, and prosperity, but rather he's using scripture in context. And I'm going, at first I'm surprised. I'm thinking, well, first of all, I was not impressed with him in the class. And in part because he was talking about church growth. And that was a subject that, even though I could see some interesting and some good points to it, I just did not like his approach. But he said a few things that kind of troubled me, and because of those few things I kind of didn't want to take any more of his classes, so I only had that one. I later found out that he started a class with John Wimber on signs and wonders, which is now huge and throughout much of the charismatic movement, the signs and wonders. And I was, to begin with, before I found out what they're up to, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to be a missionary, and I would love a class on signs and wonders. But then I heard they were growing legs. And as soon as I heard that, I'm going, okay, I know where this is all going. It's another charismatic stuff, just stuff. Fake healings, I call them. Fake healings. Oh, no, no, they're fake healings. Over 97% of the times. All right, believe me. All right. So I'm really impressed though with the first part of his chapter. I'm thinking, wow, he's just handling the scripture well. And I was like, well, you know, it opened me up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen. I didn't expect this, but I was really, really impressed until he got into our armor. And then I'm thinking, yeah, he's still quoting scripture and he's still doing it pretty much in context, but something's troubling me about this. What is it? And it's not until he gets into the area of worship that it finally dawns on me what's troubling me. Okay, as he's going through, first of all, as he's talking about fasting, you know, he warns against pride with fasting. I do remember watching a YouTube video of some lady who fasts, some woman, middle-aged, young middle-aged, who's been fasting for 3 40-day series, and all I'm thinking is, this is arrogance. I got to put it out on YouTube and tell everybody how much I've fasted, and it just turned me off totally. And he warns against arrogance. All right, Peter, I'm with you. Then he talks about praying, spiritual warfare. And when he talked about worship, worship is what turned me and realized there's something missing. There's something wrong here. Because he's using worship as a tool to fight Satan. And I'm thinking, that's not why we worship. And he's using the example of Paul and Silas praying in jail, and of course God releases the chains. I guarantee Paul and Silas did not do it to fight Satan. They were worshiping God. Now, knowing Paul's theology, the reason why, the way that Paul reasoned with Scripture, we are worthy to suffer for Jesus. He suffered a lot. He put up with a lot of abuse. He put up with, and he realized eventually, when I'm sick, when I'm in need, when I'm hungry, when I am being beaten, I have no recourse in the flesh to trust myself. Therefore, I am weakest. And when I am weakest, he is strongest. That's what Paul saw. He's worshiping it, and worship is a response. Worship is a response to God that can be misused. As you will see in all of these, fasting, prayer, and worship, they can all be misused and lead into bad direction. The problem is we think if I'm fasting, praying, and worshiping, using these disciplines, that everything's going to be okay, that I'm protected. Not necessarily. I'm going to go through each one. First of all, I'm going to start out with prayer. I remember a woman in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who had large youth groups all the time. They just end up at her house. She'd have Bible studies, and there was tons going on at all times. And people, young couples, would come and talk to her. Young kids would come and talk to her and ask her question after question, and she really helped a lot of people in the faith and a lot of people to become Christian. And one of the things that she mentioned to me one time is that she tells couples not to pray together. Why? I don't know if it was one couple or many couples, but she had a couple come to her and said, we prayed together and it was so intimate. We fell into temptation. There's something human that is involved with the intimacy of prayer that you gotta be careful about. I don't know all the dynamics, but it doesn't necessarily going to end up well all the time. So if you're a couple, young couple, and you don't want to fall into this intimate relationship, too intimate, you want your boundaries, be careful about praying together alone. All right? That would be her advice. Secondly, worship. And I'm thinking of all these things while I'm listening to C. Peter Wagner. Worship, I begin thinking, Benny Hinn uses worship as a tool to disarm people and to build up the expectation needed for a nice placebo effect that gets people believing they're actually getting healed when nothing is going on in their bodies except feelings that they get. They need that worship, and he knows it, and he's put out tapes. He's put out messages on the importance of healing to build up the ability to bring in healing. That's why they don't go to hospitals, because they need to pump people up. In hospitals, it's hard to do that without a big choir and without a lot of worship. And if you'll notice, he will continually, when things begin lulling, going down a little bit in his worship service, he'll lead right back into another worship song. Worship is being used to deceive and to disarm. So worship, as good as it is, and I think worship is critical and important, but it can be misused. And when he talks about fasting I'm thinking about that 1948 revival in Canada where everybody's fasting, a whole group of students are fasting, and help bring about the movement of the latter rain and the movement of Joel's army. See, fasting doesn't always end up good either. You know, when Jesus fasted, before he quit his fast, he had opened up a door. He had opened up a door, first of all, for temptation. And the temptation was the revival everybody wanted. Peter reflected what everybody wanted when he rebuked Jesus. After realizing Jesus was the Christ, Peter said, rebuke Jesus, because Jesus knew that revival everybody wanted is not where God was leading. He was leading to a cross. And that's something Peter just couldn't handle. And that was something, what Peter was giving into was demonic. A revelation by God turned demonic, because what he wanted was a revival. The type of revival that people want and not God. So even fasting can lead into something extremely dangerous. And all these things, prayer, worship, and fasting, are good disciplines that every Christian should have. But every one of those carries with it a dangerous side we as believers should be very careful about. I believe in the importance of worship, not for war, but for response to God. I believe in the importance of fasting and prayer. I'm going to continue with this book and keep you updated with all that I'm getting into and all that it sparks. This is Ted. Have a good day.